Well, good afternoon, folks. How you doing? Congratulations for making it this far through CA World and for making it up here after lunch. It's an impressive effort, I must say. As I walked up here today through the convention centre, all you could see were kind of dead bodies lying in the corridors of people who've been here for a few days and been out late a few times, too many during the week. But we're here now, and this is a presentation on converting from JAWS to CA iDash. Scheduled for 45 minutes, not going to take 45 minutes, you'll be pleased to hear. So we'll leave you with a buffer so you can go outside and have a lie down or whatever it is you want to do, okay? Don't stand in front of the projector. Anyone here already an iDash customer? None? How many of you here have JAWS and are looking to convert then? Quite a few. And is that, okay. So what we'll do is we'll talk about why people might want to convert, and then as this is a case study, we will talk about the details of a project that we've delivered where we converted a customer from JAWS to iDash, and this was an AutoSys customer, okay? And I'll get into the not too much in the way of technical nitty-gritty because you really will go to sleep, but just explain how we did it. I hopefully give you a comfortable feeling that the conversion is reasonably straightforward. Okay? Right. If anybody's got any questions at any point, please interrupt, hand, throw something, whatever you want to do. So that's the disclaimer. I'm sure you've all read that. I don't know how many times this week. That's my name. That's a bit about why customers want to convert. That's just the synopsis of the presentation, which was on the website, so we don't need to read that again. So yeah, as I said, it will give you a little bit of background about our company and how we fit into the picture, why you might want to use us, who we are, why people are migrating, and some of the reasons we're hearing, and maybe you could share some of your reasons of why you're considering a migration if you want to, that's fine. How we did the conversion, so that's going to get a bit techie and a bit, not too far in, but how we converted JAWS objects and JAWS data across to iDash, some of the bumps that we hit along the way, some of the lessons we learned, and the end result. So a little bit about extra technology. We're a partner company for CA in the workload space, been around for nearly 10 years. The people that work at Extra Technology, we're all workload automation veterans of many years. So I've been working with AutoSys since before it was a CA product, as have the other guys. And we've also been working with iDash before it was a CA product. So iDash was originally a third-party company that started up and wrote its own tool for forecasting and for reporting for AutoSys, and then became acquired by CA. So we're currently based in the UK, but we do work anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the world. So I've worked in UK, Europe, US, Middle East. Haven't quite made it to Australia yet, but that's on the list. So we have a very broad experience of things like AutoSys, D-Series, ESP, the CA products, and also of other products in the market. Okay, so we got lots of in-depth expertise of comparable products, mainframe, open systems, the lot. In other words, we've been around the block quite a few times with this stuff. Yep. Okay, that's a little bit about us. So, for this particular study, for this particular case of a customer, I'm not allowed to tell you who they were because they've insisted that I don't name them. Unfortunately, I can't tell you who they are. I can just tell you that they're a US-based financial institution of considerable size, okay? A long-established AutoSys customer, so many years of experience with the product, many people working through them who have very deep expertise in the product, who know what they're doing, who've had Jaws for several years as well, hooked up to their AutoSys environment, okay? And as part of a refresh, if you like, and a rebuild of their environment, upgrade effectively, they decided to investigate whether they should swap from Jaws to iDash. They had lots of reasons for doing it. We'll come on to that in a minute. But just get the idea, long established, many different instances of AutoSys, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs running, and hundreds and hundreds of users of the service. Okay, so reasonably big-sized environment. So why did they decide to migrate? Well, as I said, they were upgrading their version of AutoSys. So they thought they've got to look at the whole software stack, try and decide what they're going to do. Are they going to keep Jaws? Are they going to change? And without getting into all the nitty-gritty and the politics of what was going on, they decided to choose iDash because they wanted a CA-only software stack for workload automation. And that's a reason for migrating that we hear fairly often, okay? So at one point, Jaws was a product that was resold by CA. That's no longer the case. And then many customers are now looking at Jaws and saying, well, maybe we should remain within CA's software family. Only one company to beat with the stick when there's a problem, possibly going to result in simplified management, simplified support, maybe even some money savings along the line, who knows. So anyway, they made this decision, and without getting into too many details, they had an upgrade of AutoSys to complete, they had a switch from Jaws to iDash to complete, and then at the end of that, they were going to deploy the embedded security tool afterwards at the end of the product. Okay, I'm not going to go too far into that stuff because it's not very interesting. So their new environment is going to be based on iDash 12, not the old version, because the old version was kind of challenging, shall we say. So the new environment built entirely out of iDash 12, using Active Directory for user authentication. So Active Directory to check and find out who you are, but then currently the internal security of iDash for authorization. So kind of a two-stage process. Logging in is handled against Active Directory at the moment, but the permissions of what they can do within iDash is using the internal iDash security model. The reason for that being they're not ready to roll out the full end-to-end security piece during this product. That's an activity they're going to complete afterwards. Okay, and a simple requirement they had for iDash, alongside their workload automation environment, this has to be highly available. So if you don't know, iDash does support a kind of a full HA configuration, a couple of databases, a couple of servers, failover, as you'd expect, that kind of thing. Okay, their other key requirements were, from Jaws, they wanted to keep as much as they could. And we'll come on to what they could keep, what they could migrate, and what they couldn't, because you cannot migrate everything, okay? So clearly they needed to try and migrate across users and their permissions. They wanted to migrate across what Jaws would call a job stream and what iDash would call an SLA. And they wanted to migrate across as many of their reports as they possibly could. Make sense? Good, good. How did we do it? This is an interesting slide. It's only half the screen. How did we do it? So we put together a project team comprised of the customer, obviously, ourselves, and CA. So I'm not going to talk about how iDash was actually installed and deployed during this product, because that's a given. iDash was installed as the base product on the customer side, and it was done by CA services and by the customer based in the US. I just really want to make the point on this slide that we put the team together and that all of the work that our company did was remote, okay? So we were able to take customer data away, convert it across, ship it back to the customer site electronically, and then work collaboratively online to complete the conversion. So it was very much a collaborative online kind of WebEx-based project where we were able to, multiple people on our side on the project, and much more importantly, of course, keep the project costs down because there's no travel and this kind of stuff for people to have to pay for. And we like to keep the travel costs down, don't we? So, yeah, we put together a really good team. Teamwork on here I like to see is, you know, working towards a common vision, even when it gets a bit blurry, when you can't remember what the vision is. But it was very successful. So, very first thing, before we start, question. What would anyone here think is the number one thing, the most important thing to do first before you start this project or as part of this project? Anybody want to have a go? Back everything up. Any other thoughts from anyone? Anybody still digesting? I'll tell you what I think the answer is to this one. Number one most important thing, training. Before you insert a CD, before you open up a product image, before you build a server, before you do anything at all, think about the training. Why? Why would you do this? Because the products are different. At the end of the day, no two products are the same, okay? And if you can't get your users educated, your admins educated, if you can't convince your business sponsors that this is going to be a good idea, and if you can't kind of twist the arms of the people who sign the checks, the project is going to be doomed, okay? So I would always say, don't leave the education to the end of the project, put the training at the start, right at the start of the project, if you can. If you can. Not always possible, but none of these two projects are the same. The products are the same. Okay, they are different. Some stuff will move across easily, some stuff just doesn't. That's just the way it is. And that's the same with any conversion. We do lots of conversions of workload products. Some maps across perfectly, others very difficult. If anyone's coming along to hear about the Redwood conversion session we're talking about later, hear more about that as well. So, what did we convert? Well, it basically breaks into four sections, okay? Filters. So when a filter in iDash is where you define sets of jobs. And it could be based on parts of the job name, that kind of thing. So the concept of a filter exists in both products. Great, that's easy. We can map that across. Part two, all the users that were defined. All the users defined in tool A, we had to define in tool B. Straightforward so far. SLAs, or job streams, as Jaws calls them, little bit more tricky, little bit more difficult. Reports, reasonably straightforward, okay? Those are the four things that were existing in Jaws that we converted and moved across to iDash. Any surprises there, or is that all straightforward? Is that exactly what you'd expect? I hope. So we started with the easy stuff. We started with the filters, and this customer had a very good and a very strong naming convention within their AutoSys environment, okay? So they've got lots of objects, as you have in AutoSys. You've got jobs, you've got calendars, you've got global variables, etc., all conforming to a very strong naming convention, which was documented by the customer, okay? Fantastic, very useful. So what they were able to do was ship us a copy of basically all of their application codes. Straightforward XML format file, which they kept in a database. Gave us an extract, around about 850 different applications defined in their workload environment, okay? Now in their case, this was XML data that they sent to us, but the data could be in any format, and we could parse it and process it. Reasonably straightforward. So as I said, we were working remotely. We took this data, read it in, push it through our conversion tool, which we run, and spit out iDash filter definitions at the other end. Okay. Now, if you're familiar at all with iDash, iDash has a very useful command line interface. Okay. So there are various commands you could use to generate reports, manage users, and so on. And the good news is you can also use the command line to define objects, to define users, to define filters, and so on. So very straightforward, generate iDash filter definitions and upload them straight into iDash using ID update commands, okay? And just to give you a little idea, I know you've just had your lunch, but that's the kind of horrible data that you're working with iDash. That's a simple iDash filter definition. So the good news is it's in text format. It's English readable. It's a little bit more idiosyncratic than I'm making it out to be on the screen, but reasonably straightforward. So as I said, we took customer extract, application codes, convert those through the tool, generate 850 of these, import them straight into iDash in the command line tool. It takes about an hour to do an import of that set, maybe a little bit less. Reasonably slow, but reasonably reliable. So step one, all the filters are in place. Great. Next point, put all the users in. Okay? Get all the users, put them in, and map them to the filters that are predefined. So you've got to get this stuff in the right order. That's what I'm trying to say here. Okay? Now, in order to define all the users in iDash, we took another extract from the customer, this time out of the Jaws product. Okay? Jaws has various commands that allows you to extract your data excuse me, and dump it out into an XML file. Okay? So the customer sent us the XML data. Again, pull that across, programmatically churn that through our conversion software, and spit out iDash user definitions. You're beginning to get the theme here of what's going on, I hope. Straightforward, reasonably straightforward, excuse me. So, having taken the customer data, programmatically generated a whole bunch of user definitions and mapped those to the filters that we've already created based on the permissions that we were given from the customer, we generate another set of files, another set of definitions, ship them across to the customer, who imports them into iDash using the command line. Great. So at this point, we've got all our filters, and we've got all our user definitions in place. Fabulous. And just to give you another idea of what a user definition looks like, again, it's English, kind of English readable text. Yeah, not going to go through all of that, just to give you the idea. It's reasonably complicated, various different parameters that you have to try and get your head around. Otherwise, you do get tripped over and users can't log in. So we've done two parts of it. We've done filters, we've done users. Now comes one of the tricky bits. So that was the easy part. Okay, very straightforward. Next part, slightly more difficult. This is where we have to map job streams in Jaws to SLAs in iDash. And they are essentially slightly different. Now, this isn't official product comparison literature. Please don't take it as such. But this is just based on what we know about Jaws, what we've discovered, and comparing it to iDash. So in Jaws, the customer had 490 job streams, or SLAs, defined. Okay? Now, within Jaws, there are different types of job streams. Okay? There are basically three different types. When you define a job stream in Jaws, you can either have a deadline for the job stream that is automatically calculated by the system, or you can have a deadline that is based on the duration. So the deadline for this job stream is start time plus n minutes. You define that. Or a hard stop end time. Okay? Three different types in Jaws. In iDash, you don't have three types. You have a deadline. You define a deadline. You define an end deadline or a start deadline, or even both. Okay? So already, certain things don't map across. Tricky, but that's how it is, I'm afraid. Okay? Jaws does things like auto-discover and has a default forecasting kind of value as well when you set up a job stream. iDash kind of does the same thing, except it uses different parameters with different names. Okay? So this is why, at this point, it's a good idea to try and get some training on iDash up front, so that when somebody starts talking to you about at-risk or run validity or any of these iDash specific terms, you don't kind of start dribbling and wonder what they're talking about. So training, very good. Now, some of the SLAs we had to convert across, easy peasy. Some of them, not so easy. So all we had to do to start with, make a bunch of assumptions. Okay? We had nearly 500 SLAs to convert. How are we going to do it? So some assumptions which we made and which we agreed with the customer, of course, which they were happy with. All the SLAs we're going to define are all end deadline, not start deadline type. So iDash supports either a start deadline or an end deadline. Effectively, we're saying these are all end deadline SLAs. Okay? Next thing, they're all disabled by default. The last thing we want to do is load a bunch of SLAs in and have alerts flying all over the place out of control. So there's a switch with an iDash SLA. You can define it, but you can define it disabled. So we say they're all disabled. Okay? For all the ones where we've got no hard deadline, where it's a system calculated value, we put a dummy value in to start with, okay? And we just chose 2323 because it's an easy thing to find when we're searching for it in the text. You could put anything in there. It's got to be a valid time. But we make some assumptions. Okay, without going into what the product does and how it works, no at-risk values defined, all run validity times an hour. So these are all parameters that go on iDash SLAs that can be tweaked afterwards. But basically, just get the idea that we create a template where we need it, follow that, generate 500 SLAs based on the template, okay? And define the SLAs to be valid for every weekday of the week. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. So conversion tool number 3, reading the JAWS extract, which is XML again. Using our assumptions in our template, generate all the matching iDash SLAs and import them all in again to, into iDash using the import command, okay? And then one other thing to say is that an iDash SLA name can be different from the job name, excuse me, but we kept the job name as the SLA name. So each one of these imports, whether it's the users, whether it's the filters, whether it's the SLAs, each one of those takes 30 to 45 minutes to run. The good thing is, of course, if you decide you've got something wrong in your data, you can globally tweak all of your parameters and import them all, update them all again automatically. So you can do it as a script or a batch file or whatever you want to do. Very straightforward to do. Okay? That's how we approach the SLAs. So the implication, of course, here is that after all these SLAs are defined, there's a subsequent activity for the customer to go through to review what's been defined and validate various values, but they'd use their business users and their service users to do that. Okay? Very often, it's well beyond the scope of your JAWS and iDash admins to understand what to do with this stuff. You've got to go out to the business and ask them what to do. So, finally, reports. JAWS has got JAWS has got many different types of report in it, but they break down into 6 categories, and these are the totals that we had to convert. We had job run history reports, well over 400 of those, okay? And then of the other kinds, odds and sods, not too many. Now, iDash reports have different names, but many of them do very broadly the same thing. So a job run history report in JAWS would be a job run report in iDash. Great news, okay? So once again, as you would expect, pull out the data from JAWS. JAWS is great for spitting out XML. Push it through the conversion tool and come out with a bunch of iDash definitions for reports. So we mapped job run history reports to job runs reports, target job summary and target job detail reports to a mixture of the other 2 types. Processing load, well, you can kind of call that a latency report in iDash. iDash does have a latency report available to you, although it's not available in the GUI for iDash. It is in there. So there are some reports in iDash that are only available from the command line. Okay? So again, that's another training point to pick up. Otherwise, you can miss it. Termination status report would be a job status report, or possibly a job run report in iDash. And critical path history, everyone's favourite, well, that exists as an SLA performance report, kind of maps across pretty well in iDash. Okay, straightforward stuff, I hope. So as I said, unfortunately, quite a lot of manual effort afterwards for SLAs, but only for SLAs. So very easy to get the data out, pretty straightforward to convert it, straightforward to import it. After the fact, as you would expect, quite, some manual effort on the part of the customer to go through and validate what's being created. Inescapable, I'm afraid. So the things that we had to do, where we'd assumed a deadline, review the deadline, make sure it's okay, tweak it as required, tweak the days on which the SLA replies or doesn't, because we've made an assumption that it's every day. For all we know, Saturdays and Sundays are nothing to do with SLAs and nobody cares about the weekend. Every customer's different. And at the end, enable SLAs, but enable them carefully, okay? I will say whether you're converting or whether you're implementing iDash from scratch, it's very important that you don't enable your SLAs and your alerts until stuff has been running for a couple of weeks, because the last thing you want to do is start generating bogus alerts and annoying people, especially when it's a new tool or a new conversion from something that they're used to. Okay, it can get a little bit political, shall we say. Right, yep. Also some report activities, obviously tweak the parameters of your reports, make sure that they are what people have asked for. So, how did we get on? We did batch loads of all these things. We converted 850 filters, 750 users, 490 SLAs and 450 reports. Each load of those on the customer side would take 30 to 45 minutes. Our effort on our side to convert the data, not too bad. Reasonably straightforward stuff, shipping data backwards and forwards between us and the customer. So, a few lessons learned, because I'm going to make your eyelids droop if I talk much longer. As I keep saying, you've got to understand that these two products are different. You've got to win hearts and minds on the new product, or your implementation is going to struggle. You're going to meet resistance. You may have people who love the old tool who just won't entertain the new one until they've been shown how good it is and how much more straightforward it is to use than the old one, because we think it is. Some assumptions you have to make. You've got to make some assumptions or you will never get anywhere, and you've just got to kind of bite the bullet and go for it. Otherwise, analysis will lead to paralysis and you'll be on this project for months, okay? Clean up first if you can, if you get the chance. That's not common. Very often we find that there's lots of stuff defined in Jaws that is converted across, and then lo and behold, when challenged, we find out people don't actually need it at all. Very common, but that's with any conversion. That's not just this one. Couple of techie things to watch out for if you're actually going to do this yourself. Pay very, 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 very close attention to how the iDash command line works, because it's got various foibles, various things that will trip you up. All these slides will be available after CA World. You can read this stuff for yourself if you like. I'm not going to read it all out to you. Just to say the command line has got things in it that can catch you out. You've got to be very precise or it will simply fail. And it will fail with some horribly inelegant Java issue all over your screen, and you'll be none the wiser as to what's happened. If you really hate something that it does, open a ticket with CA, post an idea on the CA idea website, and they'll change it for you eventually. Fingers crossed. And also, one other thing to watch out for, if you're going to do this yourself, the way that Jaws works with report definitions is it's basically got an unlimited list of stuff you can include in a report. iDash hasn't, okay? iDash has got a much shorter list of what you can define against a report definition. So that's something just to be aware of, okay? Switch to wildcards if you can. CA have helped us out. They've made this field a lot bigger in iDash. But when your limit of your definition parameter is 2,000 characters, and in Jaws it's 4K or something like that, just one thing that may catch you out. So I hope you've got a flavour of a way of doing the conversion. I hope you understand that the two products are different. Training is very important, that certain items are really straightforward to map across. Job streams to SLAs in particular is the tricky one. Okay, that is the most difficult one of all. But if you make some assumptions, get them agreed, and get a template together, you can proceed. And all of this stuff is doable with us, if you want, automated, command line, straight into the other end. Very smooth conversion. Very, very straightforward. Makes people happy. Okay, we hope. Any questions? Have I beaten you to death? Sorry about that.
How long did it take you to do that?
The project itself, well, we were part of the project team with CA, and the overall project probably took a couple of months all in. Not long at all. Our involvement part was very quick, very speedy. The delays really were on, kind of getting the stuff built on the other side and getting a window to test.
So tweaking it after you convert it.
Yeah.
The times you were talking about.
Yes. Yes, very quick, very straightforward.
Can you, when they went live, did they go big bang live, or did they do particular applications first?
No, they switched straight over. They went live. So they defined everything in the new side. They validated as much as they wanted, okay, but they kind of presented it to the users as if to say, we've done this now. This is what you had before. This is what you've got now. Off you go. Big bang.
On this date, this can turn it off?
The Jaws is off, gone, yes. Very quickly switched off. Within a week of going live of iDash, Jaws is switched off and shut down. Yep. No, don't want the two together now. They didn't tell me what the timing was around the contract, so, but yeah. They're very keen to get Jaws switched off as quick as possible, start saving the money, I guess.
Do you recommend a freeze, or the customer just keeps track of any additions once you
We'd suggest a freeze. Yeah. If you put the preparation in for this, if you get the prep in, the freeze doesn't need to be too long, because you can do this extract, convert, import pretty quickly. It's not like some of these other migration projects you do where a freeze is a problem, because you've got a delta of changes you've got to then run around and push into the other side. You can do it really quickly, so that's good. And it's repeatable, because it's command line, because it's kind of not really scripts, but it's repeatable process. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, folks. Thank you.